I wanted to introduce hi, Barb. I wanted to say hi to Barb. This is
Mindy.
Coach Barb G. If anybody wants to know, you can look her up on, wait, how can we find you?
You can find me on Facebook. Also, Google Coach Barb G.
And what we want to talk about today is how the patterns of our childhood has affected our estrangement now and in the future and in the past.
So I know you and I have very similar backgrounds. Speaking for myself, I was adopted first and foremost into a family with a narcissistic mother, an alcoholic father. So there was a lot of chaos, a lot of dysfunction, a lot of emotional abuse. I realize as I've gotten older, even in raising my children, I feel like I learned how to parent at a deficit. I didn't have that example of a correct mother. Unfortunately, when you are in a situation, you look at it as normal. You don't know that it's abnormal until you're out of the situation or other people's lives or their relationships with their parents. And I've always said this that my children will never know what I spared them from because I spared them from it. And I think where so many of us make the mistake, myself included, is I have compared my upbringing and my childhood to how I raised my children. And I've always looked at that and I've thought, you have no idea how much worse your life could be. What are you complaining about? But the key to that is they don't know. Because just like we didn't know the dysfunction we were living in because it's all we knew, my kids didn't know that. So I had these expectations on my kids that were just unrealistic expectations because their life was what it was. So their hurts were different hurts, and I was comparing them to mine. But here's the key: my parents were better grandparents than they were parents. And I don't know if that was some realization that they had come to in their life that they realized they wanted to do over because they did things so wrong. I never estranged myself from my parent. I didn't estrange my children from my parent, even when we were having little rifts here and there, and I maybe didn't talk to them for a minute. I truly believe that our first example of love is our parent. And if our parents do not give us the correct example of love and what love is, it sets us up for failure from that point forward.
100%.
Every decision that we make is based on what we know. Our parents are our first teachers, just in the same way as we are our children's teachers. So when we look at these patterns that just keep continuing and continuing, we have taught our children in certain senses how to behave. When I take it back to the whole, they're the first example of love to us, I ran a 12-step program for 12 years. I had everybody from so many different walks of life. Addiction does not discriminate at all. The ones that didn't get the help were the ones that were court appointed. They showed up with their paper and they're like, I'm here, sign it for me. And they'd sit like this and they'd do their time and they'd go and they'd prove that they did it because it's part of their probation or whatever. They really didn't want to be there. There were some that got fixed. And what I realized was everything was so separate. You had the family here that was the codependency group, and then you had the group of the addiction. And they always separated the two. And I realized that they're both addictions, right? Codependency is an addiction, no different than the person that's using is an addiction. So I merged the group. And what I realized and what I found was the key to all addiction and all problems are some kind of trauma and hurt in someone's life. And what that person was doing was a behavior to numb that feeling and feel better, right? They got in this vicious cycle of, oh, I did it and I fell into it. Now I feel guilty, so I'm going to do it some more. And I really am doing what I don't want to do. And it was like this vicious cycle. But when I realized that if I could get people to focus on what the hurt was, that's what was going to fix people. Because the behavior, the addiction, was harmful to themselves. And if you truly loved yourself and you valued yourself, you wouldn't do this behavior that was damaging and hurtful to you. So what did we need to fix? We needed to fix the hurt and find out where that stemmed from. And once we could fix the hurt and get those people to face it head on and heal from the hurt, it fixed the byproduct, which was the addiction, which is what they fed themselves to make themselves feel better. Whenever I see behavior that is harmful and hurtful, it's because of a hurt. And I feel like these estranged adult children have to take a certain amount of accountability because they are not children anymore. There's accountability there.
They're not children because they're millennials and they're in their 30s and 40s,
They're
something.
adults now. Right.
They're adults. They're functioning, lovely adults that have discarded their parents for various reasons. But when we did it, like I know that I went like I'm 66. So I must have went no contact with my mother off and on for 50 years, 5 years on, 3 years on, 5 years off, three back and forth. I never talked to anybody about it. I didn't tell anybody that I went no contact. Nobody knew I didn't talk to my mother. And I believe that the generations before this generation didn't talk about it, and there was no way to communicate it unless you talked about it. There was no social media, there was no cell phones, there was no Instagram, there was no GPS, you couldn't have your kid's location, none of that stuff. There was no way to get in touch with anybody. So kids could go no contact and nobody would know. Kids also had the option of moving, like moving across the country. A lot of kids moved across the country to get away from their parents. They didn't say they were no contact, they
Right.
just did it. But they weren't healing, they were just running away basically from the situation. The kids today, they have a different set of problems that we didn't have.
Yeah.
I think a lot of that is resentment against their parents
Mhm.
because they can't live the way their parents live. But also with the boundaries, they don't want to see their mother liking their stuff on Instagram.
Do you notice that, like, when my kids, because I have two adult sons,
Can
there's
you
two
tell
other
us how
three.
many kids you have? Just how many kids
I
do
have
you?
six
I have
children. I have three sons, three daughters. I lost one daughter last April to a car accident.
sorry.
She would have been 20, she would have turned 26 on the 31st
Mm.
of January. But when my kids get to a certain age, there's things I don't want to know. I don't want to be involved in that part of your life. You like, I'm here and I've taken on the attitude of ask me for my opinion, not just giving my opinion. I don't know if you've noticed this, but this was key for me with my mother. No one is telling these adult children that we were somebody before we became a mother. Okay. This is our first time around the sun doing this with them. Okay. Just as it's their first time and they're making their mistakes and they have their children and so on and so forth. I always want to say, do better, learn from me and do better. The breakthrough that I had with my mother was the moment that I realized that people can't give you what they don't have, myself included. The minute I let go of my expectation of what I needed my mother to be and just accepted the fact that she was what she was, and granted, there were a lot of ways that she was deliberately that were not nice. But for my healing and my sanity, I had to get off the merry-go-round of saying to myself, this is what a mother should be. This is what she should do. This is why isn't she doing these things? And let it go and just accept her for the person that she was and kept my relationship there. That was the breakthrough for me.
So how old were you when that happened?
57. I want to say I was in my 40s. And listen, my mother was not a nice person. She made it very clear that she did not want children. I think she wanted children, but she wanted her own biological children. So in my home, you always felt the abandonment. You felt the abandonment of being adopted. You felt the abandonment of her. I saw a girl the other day and she made a comment about the silent treatment. And she said how abusive the silent treatment is and what message it sends to a child. It sends the message that you're not worthy
Yeah, you're less
and that you are being abandoned. And my mother was famous for that. If you found out you were mad at her because your school picture was turned face down and she wouldn't talk to you, and you would literally be jumping through hoops trying to get her to acknowledge you. You know, that whole, if you accept me, it feels the same as love.
yeah, didn't you constantly feel like you were trying to get her attention? Like I constantly
Absolutely.
and so you became a people pleaser.
Yes, I was a
Like
people pleaser to her. I was a people pleaser to my dad. I was driving my dad to the corner store, probably about 4 blocks down. He was drunker than anything. He and my godfather, both in the back seat. I was 10 years old, driving a 1974 Chevy station wagon down the street, smacking the curb while my dad's in the back seat, flying back and forth with his friend. Like, CPS would have come and taken us if somebody would have talked about that now. But I was that one that constantly sat with my dad when he was drinking, made sure that he was okay, driving him at 10 years old, driving him home without a driver's license because he was too drunk to drive, doing all those things. And the crazy thing is, if you look at your life, You see the patterns. I married a man like that. I had children with a man like that. He singled out my poor daughter that passed away, and he did the same thing to her. I would tell him all the time, get a friend, get a therapist. She's your child. Know this line. And so is that coincidence?
No,
Or
none of it's coincidence. My father was constantly high, and one day he fell on the kitchen floor, and I called my mom. I called her from stairs, a three-level house, and I said, "Dad's unconscious on the kitchen floor," and she said, "No, he's just doing what he does." And I'm like, "No, Mom, he's, like, definitely unconscious on the kitchen floor." I was, I think, 17. And the ambulance came and they took him to the hospital. And my mother allowed me to go in the room and see him with all the tubes and shit because he overdosed. And I'm 66 and I still get haunted from that. And like I can see that on TV and I get triggered. Like my
right.
mother never, ever should have allowed me to go to see him, and then also when he died, she wasn't married to him anymore, and I had to make all the funeral arrangements. I mean,
Oh my
I shouldn't have
gosh.
had to do
Don't you
the
feel though that just as you and I are having this conversation, if we were able to sit down with our adult children and have these conversations, and it's not in the way of I'm using this as an excuse, this is
yeah.
what I lived, so this is
No,
how I
you want them to
acted.
understand us.
It's the fact that this is where I came from and I've made mistakes. This is why I've made these mistakes. And in my situation, let me just give you a simple example. I have one daughter that is so famous for this. God bless her. She will unblock me and then it's just, you're this, you're horrible, but I don't need a response from you. But I
Do not
want you to be,
respond. Do
right.
not respond.
But I need you to be accountable. Click, block. So not only can I not
Same,
respond because I've been
same,
blocked,
same.
I'm being asked to be accountable for something that number one, I may not even remember, but there's no two-way conversation, which I've actually offered, and I've done that with my other
To work
daughter.
it out, to work it out, to iron it out.
And like I said, it's not using the upbringing as an excuse. It's not using all those things. It's an explanation of I'm sorry, but I learned to parent you at a deficit. And this is what I see, and I'm sorry, and this is why. So there's no open line of communication.
Also, another factor involved is the choices we made, and I don't want to disparage my kid's father, but I wouldn't have picked him had I been, I, if I would have gotten help when I was younger, not the help my mother wanted me to get. My mother wanted me to get the scapegoat help. My mother desperately needed something to be wrong with me for nothing to be wrong with her. So
Right.
she took me to therapist after
Oh
therapist
my
after
gosh. That
psychiatrist.
she needed something to be wrong with you, so there was nothing wrong with her.
She did. She needed something to be wrong with me, and my
Yes.
sister even jumped in on it. So my mother would take me, so this was the pattern. So I was like 13, my sister was like 17, I don't know. My mother would start to take me to doctors, psychiatrists, not therapists, not the ones that prescribe medicine. She wanted me to be bipolar. She needed me to be bipolar. Absolutely 100%. And if my mother couldn't take me, my sister took me because my sister also needed me to be bipolar so they could feel better about their own shitty life or like how they were. So the doctors some would go along. I think I made it so like 5, 6, 7 doctors. Some of them would go along and put me on whatever the lithium drugs are. I don't know what the drugs were back then, the
Yeah.
Paxil, like all those drugs. Like they would put me on them, nothing would happen. And the doctors would tell my mother that they didn't feel anything was wrong with me. And then she would take me to a different doctor and a different doctor and a different doctor. So the doctors would say something was wrong with me and they wouldn't. And she wasn't happy with that. She needed something to be wrong with me in order for her to say things to me like, you think you're so smart. You think like all the verbal abuse that we got or the dismissive behavior. Did you get the dismissive behavior?
All the time.
So I got the dismissive behavior and the verbal behavior. So when I had kids, that was what I learned. Like, I learned not to take my kids to therapy, but
Well, you bring up the scapegoat, though. Now, here's
yeah,
the interesting thing. You were a scapegoat with your mother. Do you find that you're a scapegoat with your daughter who's estranged from you? Do you find that
100%.
things are your fault? It's
Fine.
her opinion? Because that's my situation.
Yeah, everything's so my son that talks to me, my son, my daughter-in-law, they'll tease me, like, I'll be with them with my husband, and they'll tease me. Just cute little teases, like little jabby things, like nothing,
Yeah,
but I take it personal because I'm sensitive, because we're super like hyper vigilant to anybody like yelling at us or saying anything negative of us because we don't
right.
want anybody to think badly of us because we're people pleasers. So I'll say to him, please stop doing that. I don't like when you do that. And and like all three of them say the same thing all the time. I'm an easy
Oh, you're
target.
just oversensitive.
You're an easy target. You're an easy target.
Yeah.
I'm an easy target.
But you come by it honestly. This is the point that I'm making. You come by it honestly because it's what you were taught and it's how you were raised and it was the position that you took. I grew up in a situation where everything was my fault. I could be driving my
Hey,
car. Let me put it to you this way. My dad gave me a car and it had four bald tires on it. It was this huge Cadillac. And my brother said, I need you to drive me to work today. And it was snowing like crazy. We were living in Detroit at the time. I drove him and the tires were bald and I'm coming off the expressway and a truck is coming this way and the car is not stopping and I'm pumping the brakes and it's sliding because the tires are bald and I slammed on the brakes and slid in front of the truck, smashed the barrier, spun long story short, I totaled the car. My father was so angry. It was my fault. It wasn't his fault that I was driving a car with bald tires. He didn't care about my well being. Some guy from Colorado who was driving to the airport. Could you imagine this? Of course, this was the 80s. No cell phone. I couldn't call anybody. He takes a crowbar out of his trunk, pries me out of the car, asks me where I lived. I wasn't living at home at the time. I said, can you take me to my parents' house? The first thing my dad, where's my car? What's wrong with the car? Not, Dad, I got in an accident. Doesn't care about me. Didn't care that he gave me a car that had four bald tires and the steel was coming out of it. You shouldn't have been there. You shouldn't have been doing it. It was always this thing. It's your fault. You created this. If there was a situation with a teacher at school, what did you do to create that situation? If someone was mistreating you, what did you do to create that situation? So I became the scapegoat there. I was the scapegoat in my marriage with my ex husband. I said, I'm going to get a sign made and put it on my front lawn that says it's my fault because everything was my fault. This is what my children saw. They were raised in a home with a man that disrespected their mother, that treated her horribly, that everything was her fault. We taught my children how to treat me. This is
exactly.
what I accepted. But this is where I came from. I feel like if we could have those conversations, but see, this is what really, and you and I touched on this a little bit about the estrangement issue and being stuck in estrangement, right? And I feel like when you're in a situation like this, it should do something, which means it should take you inwardly. There's two parties here, and you should start thinking about what your part in it is. And I think so many people that get stuck in estrangement are so much blaming the estranged children, which I'm not making excuses for them and how they're handling
No,
things and things that they're doing. But instead of looking at themselves, they're in this vicious cycle of the estrangement and the depression and all of these things instead of looking inward and figuring out what their part could have been.
but they're getting validated from other mothers that are in the same situation that have mom mentality. And I'm sorry if the other mothers get mad at me for this because I am one of you, but
I
I
agree.
I read these things. You and I text each other back and forth with this. I look at these mothers and I'm like, God help me for saying this comment. But I know why some of these kids are estranged from some of these mothers.
No, no, I totally get what you're saying. And again, it takes it back to there are stages of going through this, Mindy. And I look at these groups and I look at these women and I go, oh, I remember being
You know what stage
there.
they're in. Can you read it? Can you read a post and know exactly what stage they're
Oh my goodness. But the point is, I'm never going to judge another estranged
in?
mother for where they're at because I probably have been there already or I have not gotten there yet. And unfortunately, what I feel I'm starting to see is I'm seeing people capitalize off of estrangement.
Yeah,
And I think that is
they are.
wrong.
Yeah,
These stories, the grief that these mothers go through, in my opinion, and myself included, are sacred. And I
they're
see people
heartbreaking.
capitalizing off of it. And I just do not appreciate that. But I also see people really judging these other mothers and where they're at. And I put a lady in her place not that long ago, and I did it gently, but she was talking about, I'm new to this group, and this woman, she called her daughter such a horrible name. And I can't even imagine. That's probably why she's estranged. She must have been a horrible mother. And I said this to her. I said, I'm very good at holding my tongue and grateful because, listen, there are so many things I wanted to say in response to my kids, but I didn't. My mind said, say this because I was angry at what they were saying, but the words that came out were kind and loving every single time. And little did I know that the last text message conversation I had with my daughter who died was going to be the last one I had with her. And when I reread it, I was kind and loving to her, even though she was
Right.
angry at me. So the last words that she got from me were kind and loving. But what has transpired after her passing and the funeral and what her siblings that are estranged have done, I could literally tell them to go themselves and not feel any kind of way about it. There are different things that bring us to different places. So to see all this judgment going on, it's just wrong.
Judging each other. The mothers are definitely judging each other. There's a lot of judging. There's a bar that some of the mothers have. I don't know. It's she talks to one kid and she doesn't talk to three, and there's got to be something wrong with her. She has four kids and she doesn't talk to her kids. There,
Never
I
say
mean,
never.
something
Never.
I'd like to say to you. If you told me 5 years ago in a day, and this is another thing, the mothers all know the day that the kids went estranged, no matter what position they're in. Like the mothers all know. Like, I know that my daughter went estranged February 28th of 2021. 5 years will be February 2020. The last time I saw her, I did reconcile with her for 3 months, but the last time I, like, actually saw her before the estrangement was February 28th of 2021. Why did I talk about that?
Because of never to say never. You would have never thought
Oh, so
that,
if
yeah.
you would have told me February 2020 of 2021 that my daughter was never gonna talk to me again, I would give you everything I owned, including my 2 dogs, my house, my husband, my car, everything. You could leave me with nothing naked on the street. That's what I would give you to tell you you were so fucking full of shit. She would
Yep.
never not talk to me, period. End of story. Never going to happen. And a lot of these mothers that haven't had kids go estranged, not the ones in the group, but the ones that haven't gone estranged, they're like, my kids would never go estranged. What do you think? What do you think
Yeah.
I did to make her be estranged? No, the situations, the combinations, the perfect storm of our messed up childhood and our picking bad partners. We take accountability. Yes, I agree. We take accountability. We are culpable. We take accountability. I too take accountability. But I really cannot reach back in her 32 years of her living on the lake, minus the 5 that I haven't seen her. So when she was 27, I really can't come back with any big shift in our relationship that caused this.
So much of what happens to you in your life, whether it's hurt or trauma, abuse, all of these things have led you down this road that has created the adult that you've become and the decisions that you've made. It's no different in this situation. When you sat back and you thought about, oh, when I get married and I have my children and what kind of mother I'm going to be and what my children are going to be like, did you ever think that it would come to this? Invited to my daughter's wedding. She got married without me, my oldest daughter. I was devastated. I remember having her on my lap and holding her hand, and she would wrap her hand around my finger, and it was so tiny, and I would look at her little ring finger, and I'd say to myself, and I'd do the math in my head, how old am I gonna be when she gets married? And when I'm sitting in that front row at her wedding, am I gonna think about this moment because it's burned in my mind? Am I gonna look at her and think
Her
about
little
that
foot.
tiny little finger and the ring that was gonna be on her finger, and you got married without me? Did I ever in my life think
No.
that this would be my reality? Never.
Does she have children?
She has 2 sons. I've never met him. She told him I'm dead.
I couldn't stand my mother when she was at the hospital when I had both my kids. I don't know how these kids square that circle of not
You
having
know,
us
Mindy,
be there.
just in the same way as you said, things are different for our kids now as they were when we were growing up, when we purchased a home and we did all of these other things. I am convinced that we raised our kids one way in the home, but there are so many outward influences on them, whether it's the internet, it's things that they watch on
Right. See,
TV.
we didn't have
We
that.
didn't have any of that.
We
We
had
didn't have
three
any of that.
TV stations.
And it went off at midnight. And I feel like these kids, a lot of them are lacking in the empathy department. And I don't know why. I I cared for both my parents until they passed away. And family
Oh,
members even said to me, I can't believe you're doing that. My brothers bailed. They were like, we are not going to do anything to help with them, but I will help you. The empathetic part of me, the human being part of me, would have done it for a stranger. I couldn't live with the fact that they would be alone and either be taken advantage of or weren't getting the care that they needed. It was just the empathy in me. It was the human part of me. And I'm not.
I think we were raised to have a hierarchy. Like there was no decision whether you were supposed to take care of your parents when they get older. Like
Right.
certain cultures don't have this estrangement because they have stronger family bonds. I mean, not I don't know if that's a fact, but I have been interviewing people for months now, and I have come across only one type of person. Like not it doesn't happen in a lot of other cultures.
I would
I
agree with
mean,
that. I've
I
seen that.
I have
Again, Mindy, don't you think kids live what they learn? And my parents took care of their parents. I watched them take care of their parents. I helped my parents take care of my grandparents. We did all of those things. My children watched me take care of my parents. I took care of my ex husband's father until he passed away. My children watched me do that. What puzzles me is the behavior now because of the example that was given to them. And I don't know. I haven't figured that part out yet, other than it's like black and white. There's no gray area for them. And that gray area is empathy. Like they're not capable of going, my parents are human too. And if they aren't capable of saying that their parents are human too, you don't have that open communication to where they're willing to understand. Just like I told you, the breakthrough moment for me and my mother was when I accepted that she can't give me what she doesn't have. And I was going to accept her for what she was. I had two choices to either never accept her or just settle into the fact that this is who she is. I'll never get those things from her. And I'm not going to X her on my life. I guess I'm just going to continue to just be cordial and just not have those expectations. I don't see that happening. And I don't know why that is, whether they're getting bad information. I don't know.
I moved 5 months ago, and I saw my mother before I moved, and I remember taking her out and being in the car with her, and she had said something to me that triggered me to be 7. Again, I was driving. She's 89 at the time. We were driving. We were on one of our makeup lunches, whatever. And she triggered me so bad. She said one thing that brought me back to my childhood that I literally had to stop, pull the car over, and I was hyperventilating for half an hour. I couldn't catch my breath. Our children don't have those moments. Like they didn't have those trigger moments. Maybe they did. I don't know.
I don't
I
know. Mindy, my husband took a potato chip bag the other day and he cut the bag because it was getting down to the bottom. And it made me so angry. I looked at him, I said, please don't ever do that. I'm looking at my mother right now. Something as simple as that.
yeah,
Don't know what the trigger is going to be or why
yeah.
you have that trigger or whatever. They're there. And I don't know. See, I guess I got to bring it back to we learned to parent at a deficit. And I'm comparing what my upbringing was, knowing the massive abundance of what my kids grew up in, taking the accountability for, let me just put it this way. Growing up as a scapegoat and not having anybody ever defend me, I became a helicopter mom that was
Oh
constantly.
yes, we're overcompensating.
So there's a lot of that in there. And you said that to an adult child that was estranged, they would be like, oh, that's a huge thing. It doesn't look like it's abusive, but it's a reason, okay, that overcompensation, why they've become having this entitlement attitude or,
Right,
things like that.
but a therapist explained this to me, the overcompensation that we did when we thought we were smothering them by being amazing mothers, and like that overcompensation that we did, the correction looks like control to these kids. So it looks like control, like we're involved, we were so heavily involved with what
Right.
school they went to, where they lived, who they married,
Sure.
what they
Right.
look like.
Here's what's interesting. So I told you my grandmother just passed away. She was 100 years old and she had all her faculties until she passed away. And only way I can describe her in one word would be love. That woman would hug you and she healed something in me. I never had a
See,
mother.
I
And
didn't have a
when I met her, and she was only in my life 9 years because this is my biological grandmother. And so when I met my dad, this was my dad's mother. I met her. My one daughter literally lived 5 minutes from her house. And I would say to her, man, you should really go spend some time with Grandma Ruby. Like the knowledge, just the love, all of those things. But then and she never did. None of my kids none of them wanted to get involved with that or know that. But then I realized I did that for me. I found my biological parents to find out where I came from because I wanted to pass on my heritage to my children and give them this network, and thought, man, that's what I was lacking when I was growing up. And if I could get them to be a part of this, they would have this grandmother and a great grandmother and aunts and all of this network. I wanted that for them. But what I realized was my kids knew where they came from. They knew who I was. I didn't have that.
So we wanted
Right?
that.
So I can see where what you're saying is true. Like they could perceive that as control, like you're trying to force something on me, trying to give them something I didn't have.
That's the thing. So I had a big thing where I wanted to go to FIT in New York, and my mother let me apply to FIT in New York, Fashion Institute of Technology, and I got in. But she couldn't let me go there because they had no money. So she bullshitted me to apply, and I applied and got in, and I couldn't go. So that stuck with me forever. And probably the bald tires, you probably bought your kids new cars when they got of age, correct?
All my kids had great cars. My
Brand
husband
new
said, "Baby,
cars.
just spent $1,500 into fixing my son's car." We would never let our children drive in a car that was unsafe to
Both
drive.
my kids had brand new cars. They
Yes.
got to pick any car they wanted within a certain price range, and they got a new car because I had a shitty car like you did, and I went to school, and my tires were bald, and I literally drove under the school bus and ripped the whole roof off the top. I don't
Oh,
even know.
I was on my own at 17, figuring it out. I had this discussion with my son the other day because he's 23 years old and I'm trying to teach him responsibility and what's financially responsible and what should come first and what's not. And at that age, I had to make the decision of I can't go to college because I can't pay for it. I couldn't have a house phone because I had to choose whether I had electricity or food to eat. There were certain decisions that I had to make. And when I was having this discussion with my husband, I said, every one of our kids that moved out and got their own place, Mindy, we bought them furniture.
Oh,
I filled their house down to Motrin in the cabinet
window treatment. Yeah.
when I thought about everything they could possibly need because I remembered what it was like. I have a very dear friend of mine who is actually my current husband's cousin, and we have been friends 45 plus years. And I worked for their bakery growing up. We've known each other since I was a teenager. If they did not let me take home food at the end of the day that was left over, I would not have eaten. And I am so grateful for these people to this day.
But you passed that
I'm
on. It's about that.
sure my children would never have those experiences. But again, that overcompensation, what did I teach them? There was no middle ground. I feel like
No,
there was no middle ground. I didn't know what the middle ground was.
we didn't have a middle ground. So we started to
The
smother the
extreme
kids.
opposite over here,
And the
you know?
kids, so the therapist was explaining to me about, yeah, this is her take on it, but the control of the smothering turned into control. The helicopter turned into control, and the kids lost their identity. And they don't really want to be no contact. They just want space. And we don't understand what space is. Like she was explaining that to me. She went no contact with her mother, and she wanted 3, 4 months. Just her mother was like a lie, and she just wanted her mother to leave her alone for a little bit so she could work things out in her head. After 2 weeks, her mother called her and said, "Your space is over." Another form of control.
See, I would never do that to my kids.
No, you
I
wouldn't,
think
and
I
I
did
wouldn't.
the extreme because I was always put in a box and told, "This is where you're gonna go to college, you're gonna go to Madonna College, you're gonna become a nurse, and if you're not gonna do those things, we're not gonna pay for your education." And I
Uh,
didn't wanna go to Madonna College, and I didn't wanna be a nurse.
we gave them too many. Did we give them too many choices? We gave them way too
So,
many
I
choices.
feel like I looked at each one of my kids and it was exhausting, and it was especially going through the divorce with their father. Each one was so individual, and they all had different relationships with him, and they all reacted differently, and I was trying to make sure that I catered to each one of them personally.
Me.
It was nothing straight across the board, and
No.
I don't know if that was the right thing to do or not.
I think that we tried to do the best thing we could with what we had, and I think that so many factors come into it. Who they marry, who their partner is, what relationship your ex has with them.
I saw the post that you put out there the other day when you were talking about your mom and your sister, and now they're friends with your daughter and all of these things. And someone commented on that. And listen, you are a bigger person than me. This is why I don't go out there like that because
Yeah.
I just, I will
What
snap.
they say, what
I,
they say, what
they
they say. It has
said
to be my fault.
something along the lines of, when are you going to wake up and realize that when nobody wants anything to do with you, like you are the problem? This is what I want to tell people. Usual.
Listen, I reconciled with my daughter for 3 months in 2024, July to September of 2024. My sister had no relationship with my daughter, 0, 0 relationship. Couldn't tell you what color eyes she had. The minute I went into contact, my sister latched onto hers, my sister and my mother latched onto her. I meet my daughter the first day, and my daughter hasn't seen me for 3 years, and she's like a pagan shit. She's all over me. We went out to lunch, and then we sat in Panera's for another 3 hours. We were out all day. And we were out an over amount of time that we should have been out. My daughter gets a phone call in the middle of her being with me because my sister thought it was time for my daughter to be home and called my daughter and wanted to know how it went. Never even had my daughter's phone number. My sister called my daughter while I was with her that day, the first day I saw her in 3 years. That's not me. That's not my fault.
Isn't it so sad that people would rather see dissension in a family than reconciliation in a family? And I got to tell you, I believe that it's a personal thing with them. It's a personal issue against you, meaning that it's their feelings towards you, and they can't put their feelings aside. They're lumping it all together. They believe what they want to believe about you. And anybody who's going to have an issue with you, they're gonna latch on to someone that has an issue with you. And when it's your child, what better way
I know that gets to you. Yeah, it was just so telling when she called her. My daughter picked up the phone and she goes, her name, and I'm just like, I was just amazement. I was just like incomplete. I was baffled. But the people make comments too on my TikTok, and will make like a general or a personal. If I do the personal, they blame me. But if I do a general, they personalize it to them. Oh, I didn't have that experience. This is a general post. Like I'm
everyone's
trying.
experience is different.
Yeah, so some people, I don't know, there's a lot of really hard people out there, and I don't know how this ends. I don't think I know how this ends, but like I can tell you that you are an estrangement radar. You have estrangement radar right now. I can look at a situation and I can tell you that's going to be an estrangement. Now,
Yes.
do you do that?
Yes, absolutely. Because you see the signs. This started with my oldest daughter. She forever has been in and out. And I formed this expectation. And I said it to my husband. I go, I'm never going to know her children. I honestly felt like I was better off not knowing her children because how in and out of my life she was. I didn't want her children to be hurt. I didn't want her children to know a grandmother and have a good relationship or love a grandmother and then they're snatched and then the children are hurt. So I felt it's probably
That
better if
is
she, and to them, to their children, it's not fair to them. I'm an adult. I could get past it.
you just don't want to put yourself in that hurt because the hurt
Right.
of the estrangement is so monumental. I can't imagine anything worse. Literally cannot. Your daughter died. I could imagine that being the most. Is this as painful as that?
This is uncharted territory because I don't think I've completely grieved her correctly yet. The month of January was very difficult for me.
Yeah,
I went into a
right.
cocoon, but the transition from grieving her alive to I will never, ever get to hold her again. I don't know. I don't think that I have properly grieved her. I can tell you that there is peace because listen, we're mothers, right? My daughter, and I'm not just saying this because she was my daughter, but she was model material, absolutely gorgeous. And here she was living on her own, out of my reach. And me not knowing, is she making good decisions? Is she going to Walmart at 2 o'clock in the morning and someone snatches her? These are the thoughts that were
Yeah,
constantly
we
going
have
through
those.
my mind when I had no contact with her. And knowing that it's the craziest thing, but now I know where she is.
Yeah, I
Was
can there's no more hurt for her.
But grieving someone that's alive is so much more different than someone who's not. I really think the grief process of someone that's alive is more painful than no, there's no period at the end of that sentence.
Oh,
When someone
it's
passes
so
away, there's
hard.
a reason. There's a period at the end of the sentence. They're never coming back. When someone's alive, you're constantly in the state of hope and wanting reconciliation and hurt and all of these things. I tell you what, said to my husband, I said, I was had such a grip on wanting my kids back in my life that it's that whole let go or be drug.
Yeah.
I was covered head to toe in road rash. And if
Oh,
I could tell anybody, I would say, you have to let go.
you have to.
That's to your point of how people get stuck in this
You
estrangement
have
and
to
they're
let
so
go.
focused on the estrangement cycle. If you're not letting go, you're not living. You have given your whole life and your whole everything to what you don't have right now. And you're in this vicious cycle. And it's not to say that you don't love them. It's not to say that
No,
you don't
but you
ever.
have to let go because everything else is screwed up if you don't. I would look at my grandchildren, the ones that I have here, and I would cry because of the one I didn't see. There's some point, there's something that has to snap, there's something that has to happen where you just make peace with the fact that you
Yes,
had her for 27 years. It was a wonderful 27 years. I don't know what's happened to her in the last 5 other than the 3 months that I saw.
right.
You don't know if she's cleaning her house. You don't know if her dishes are put away. You don't know if her nails are chipped. You don't know if she's properly taking care of herself. You don't know if she's cutting her hair. Whatever, you just don't know, and you can't physically, mentally, and emotionally care about it anymore. You have to let
It's
it
not
go.
that you're giving up. It's not
You
that
have
you
to go.
up on your child. You have to choose you at a certain point.
You have to let them
And
go.
yes. And
Walked
if they
away
come
from
back
her.
to you, then they come back to you. But
We're different people. Like, the version of me now is not the same person I
yes,
was.
I agree.
I've also been in therapy for 4 years, so I have different behaviors now than I had before. I'm not the same person. You just can't pick up with me after not talking to me for 5 years and be the same person.
Sad part though, don't you think that the advice that these estranged adult children are getting when they're being told what your parents' behavior was abusive and it's their fault, they're never going to be able to come back a different person. Just in the same way as this has changed us as people, when they continue to be in victim mode and feel like they are the victim of their parents and their parents are the sole reason as to why they don't speak to them and why they're not in their life, they will never get fixed. They're never going to be different people. And I have said it, if you're going to come back to me, you better come back different because the way you left and your behavior, I look at my life and I say to myself that if I was stronger, which I wasn't, so I can't blame myself for it, the moment the disrespect started, I would have put them in their place and I would have said, come back and find me
Yeah.
when you decide that you want to treat me with some respect.
We couldn't do and now we can do that. I
Right.
did that with her. It was uncomfortable. I was not the same person, and he there was just so many factors that were involved, and it wasn't good for me. It wasn't good for me. It was not right for me, but I think that this conversation needs to continue again, but for right now, I think we need to put this to rest for now, and then we'll pick it up again. But I don't think we're going to come up with answers, but we can keep a dialogue going, and
We can get
everybody can,
closer.
right, and everybody can support each other and get out of that shitty, depressed state, and at least talk about it and try to understand it a little better so we can get into a different place, like mentally. And that's why I'm doing this because I want people to understand different people and different factors and different parts of this and different relationship structures that happen here.
I want to leave you with one thing that I think is something that people can focus on and think about and evaluate where you're at in it. We attract what we are.
Absolutely.
So, what you're feeling, if you are stuck in depressed mode, in estrangement mode, and that's what your whole focus is, Mindy, that's all you're going to get. It's what you put out, it's what's coming back to you. So, the best advice that I could give is to change your focus, change your thought process, do something for
Well,
yourself.
you change your environment, you change something.
Right. But That's key, and I don't think many people realize that you do attract what you are. You put what you're putting out is what is being attracted to
Right.
you. So if this is your main focus, you're never gonna get out of it.
No, I'm trying everything I can to get out of this quickly. Like, I don't want to be in this space. It's tough, but
We won't be
I
here
think we're
forever.
good. Are we good?
We're good.
All right. I love you, Barb. I'll
I
see you
love
on
you
the
too.
19th.
Bye.
We're going to have dinner. Pick somewhere to go.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Till
All
next time. All right,
right.
bye-bye.
Bye.